Two. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. 1, 1, 2. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, can we all get settled so that we can start? Okay, before we start, we need to have somebody from the hotel to assist us with the safety protocols.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sheraton Pretoria Hotel. My name is Tina Scully. I'll be your hostess for today. There are 3 emergency doors on my left-hand side. Okay. If the fire may protrude from the 2 brown doors, you will use the 3 emergency doors on my left-hand side, where you'll find a Sheraton staff member that will be able to assist you. If the fire may protrude from this side, which is our kitchen, you are expected to exit on the 2 brown doors. Then you'll be able to go outside. Then the owner of HN43DBGP, it's a gray Ford Ranger. They're asking you to please remove your car where you've parked it. It's not a safe place. Our Wi-Fi password is IT2020, caps small letter, does not matter. Please select I have a code on. It's going to transfer you to another page. The password is IT2020. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. I am Funeka Khumalo. I am a council member at Nike. I will be the program director for today. Welcome everyone to the STI Indicators Report launch, which is the Science, Technology and Innovations Indicators Report launch. I believe we have people that have connected online as well. I'm trying to find somebody from the Secretariat. Okay, looks like all is good. Connected. Thank you. The STI Indicators Report is one of the ways that the National Advisory Council on Innovation, which is NACI, monitors the performance of national systems of innovation, which is NSI. This report should assist stakeholders in policy and decision-making, and as it is isibuko, the mirror of the NSI. I want to start by calling up the NACI chair, which is Mr. Tilson Magnoni, to come forward and give us a welcome address.
Check. Thank you, Program Director, Ms. Funeka Khumalo, Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Nzimande, Director General, Dr. Mjwaha, and the DDGs, NACI Council members, NACI CEO, Dr. Cele, and the Secretariat. Distinguished guests, welcome to this important workshop and a happy Women's Month. May we continue to support and honor the incredible women of this country. I am pleased to present the Science, Technology and Innovation Indicators Report 2023. The National Advisory Council on Innovation is empowered by the 2019 White Paper on Science, Technology, and Innovation to monitor and evaluate the performance of the South African National System of Innovation, NSI. The theme for 2023 Indicators Report launch is Taking a Moment. The report offers an opportunity for NSI actors to pause and reflect on the performance of the NSI and its impact on policies and measures in addressing socio-economic challenges in our country. Some of the highlights of the reports include a decline in business sector expenditure in R&D over the decade. The business sector's capacity to attract foreign funding is also declining overall and as a share of foreign funding. Declining business sector R&D expenditure suggests that further decline in the numbers employed in the R&D in the business sector going forward. The big business sector share of the total researchers in the country reduced from 15.2% in 2011-2012 to 7.3% in 2020-2021. A significant percentage of the population, approximately 20%, qualify as extremely poor in 2021. Other types of poverty remains high as well. That is lower bound poverty at 29% and upper bound poverty at 42%. In this light, colleagues, embedding innovating systems with the country's policy agenda requires us to deliver solutions to these socio-economic challenges. As NACI, we support the following progressive initiatives: setting up the Africa-wide research and the Innovation Fund. We support the establishment of the OR Tambo University of Science and Innovation. The NACI Council, the Secretariat, are hopeful that all stakeholders will find the reports useful in guiding future work and promoting innovation across the South African society and our economy, and more so towards working, developing meaningful strategies to enhance the performance and the impact of NSI in our society. On behalf of the NACI Council, I sincerely like to thank the contributors on this important report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for that warm welcome. We are privileged to have our minister here, Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande, who will be giving us our keynote address. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Ms. Khumalo. Okay. Um, and thanks for chairing this very important event. Let me greet our Director General of the Department of Science and Innovation, Dr. Philip Mjwara, and all the Deputy Directors General who are present here. Let me also greet the NACI Chairperson, Mr. Tilson Magnoni, the CEO of NACI, Dr. Mlungi Sicele, all the CEOs and executives from all of our public entities who are here. Greetings to you. Let me also greet civil society, higher education, and business leaders who have joined us this morning, physically here as well as virtually, distinguished guests, members of the media. In the 2019 white paper on science, technology, and innovation empowers the National Advisory Council on Innovation, NACI in short, to monitor and evaluate the national system, our national system of innovation, NSI as we call it. NACI is a leading advisory body to government on science, technology, and innovation in what we believe is a well-coordinated, responsive, and functioning national system of innovation. NACI provides evidence-based advice to me as minister, and then I take this advice to cabinet, as I will do with this report. It will be presented to cabinet sometime later this year. Regarding our report today, under NACI's monitoring and evaluation framework, the Center for Science, Technology, Innovation, STI indicators, was commissioned to produce the 2023 STI indicators report. Today, we are gathered here for me to officially present the report to the public. As much as the report will illustrate some challenges in our STI landscape, a lot of positive developments have taken place. And through our decadal plan, our 10-year plan, 2021 to 2031, we will address a number of these challenges and go beyond by building a resilient STI system. I will therefore provide the highlights of the report, and the head of NACI, Dr. Cele, will make a detailed presentation. Just on the highlights of the report that I felt I needed to point out to is that the proportion of staff over 60 years of age, both men and women, increased from 7.3% in 2011 to 10.4% in 2020. Now, this has got contradictory indications. On the one hand, we must welcome the increase of your experienced research cohort into our system, which is very good, but the negative side of it is that they will soon be retiring and being out of the system. So it's both good and bad. Which means, therefore, amongst other things, that this trend implies that public universities will possibly lose, as I say, 10% of permanent staff with doctoral degrees and experience due to retirement within the next 5 years. Furthermore, the downside is that the proportion of staff aged between 20 to 29 declined from 7.9% in 2011 to 5.8% in 2020. The question is, why are young people in our universities in particular not taking up postgraduate studies, to put it simply, in science? Although there's an increase in the proportion of staff aged between 30 to 39, this increase is lower than that of staff aged over 60, which means what we still have to outline is the pipeline to align, as in the pipeline. Although there is an increase, as I say, or 30 to 39, there is, however, given the over 60s, a need to intensify support to young academic staff through instruments such as the New Generation of Academics program, which is the Department of Higher Education and Training's program to produce more academics. I must also say one thing, that when we launched our PhD tracer studies, was it last week or week before last? Week before last, one young man from Stellenbosch University raised something that has stuck in my mind, saying, Minister, it's good on the one hand that we are focusing on funding for PhD programs to people under 35. As a matter of fact, NRF, that's the criteria. But we're losing out because there are people who are like mid-career professionals who are in their 40s, that if you fund them to actually do their PhDs, you are likely to get hugely positive outcome out of that with experienced people who are likely to be more innovative. Now, I think this poses a challenge, DG, that maybe we may have to relook at the percentage of staff, of people, researchers in terms of age that we fund, that we might have to increase some funding to mid-level. That really attracted me because some of these people want to do PhDs. I'm 45, I've got lots of experience. Because of insight, I feel I must do a PhD. And funding that person for a PhD is likely to contribute to our STI system significantly. Now, our Department of Higher Education and Training's implementation of various programs aimed at developing future generations of academics and building staff capacity. The gender gap, I'm pleased to say, among academic staff is gradually closing. The proportions of male and female researchers are now approaching parity. It's a very important advance that we are actually making. I don't know, it's Women's Month. The women are not even clapping for this. And everybody else, by the way, not only women. The percentage of staff in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields has remained consistent over time. In 2010, the proportion of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics staff among all staff was 51.5%, which rose slightly to 51.9% in 2021. This finding is on reflection not surprising because South African academics, once appointed on a permanent basis, cannot easily be replaced. Given that the typical academic career is around 40 years, universities have often been compared to large tankers which change course slowly and with difficulty. Well, maybe there's the negative side of that. The positive side of that is that continuity also is important. For the percentage of staff in the STEM fields to increase significantly in relation to non-STEM, that is social sciences, humanities, education, economic and management sciences staff, it would require many universities to change their organizational design, creating more medical schools, engineering faculties, and larger science faculties. But I don't want to be misread in saying this. I think the biggest challenge that we have as the science community, globally and in South Africa, is to foster multidisciplinary approaches to science, technology, and innovation. Yes, increase STEM, there's no doubt about that, but forge it. We did it exceptionally well, by the way, in managing COVID-19. The work that was done by our biomedical researchers together with our humanities in managing COVID, it was an excellent example of multidisciplinarity. However, the envisaged establishment of the new Oliver Tambo, Ishmael, we are jumping the gun now. I'm fighting my speechwriter now. We always have this fight between the two of us. This new university is yet to be named. Some people are lobbying that it be called Oliver Tambo. We are not yet there. We are still even go to cabinet about this. But the feasibility study for the establishment of the new University of Science and Innovation in Ekurhuleni is an example of the type of intervention that we need. The goal of increasing the numbers of graduates in STEM has been stated and repeated in multiple national policy documents since 1994. The 2019 white paper on science, technology, and innovation states that the country does not produce enough science or STEM skills for the economy. Despite various initiatives over the years to increase the output of SET graduates, the percentage of SET graduates as a proportion of all graduates have remained unchanged over the past 12 years. Sounds like Verwoerd is still with us, actually. You know, this is, it's more than a case. I don't know this legacy of Verwoerd, who said Black people can't do science. Like my economics lecturer in 1976, who said, you, so many of you in this class, 150 in first year, you will be lucky if 5 reach third year. That's where we come from, by the way. We dare not forget this. And he said, you must know the Black power that you shout is only good behind the spade, not for economists. But this thing of STEM, I think for Naki and for all of us, we really have to break it because it starts from the pipeline from the schools. We are not getting enough maths and science learners who come through matric. So something big still needs to be done here. We are doing a lot of work, I know, together with the Department of Basic Education. Now, since 2015, the proportion of female doctoral graduates in the STEM fields have surpassed those of male graduates. Yes. There has also been an increase in the production of Black doctoral graduates in STEM fields. Another positive development in the same domain has been the increase in the number of Black doctoral graduates, even in fields that they were prevented from doing before. By the way, we also need to remind ourselves that prior to 1994, there was no Black university under apartheid that had an engineering school. Because Black people under apartheid were not supposed to be engineers. Now, we are not saying this because we wanted to cause trouble. It's a fact that we remind ourselves where we are in terms of where we come from. We've come a long way in overcoming the apartheid demographics in STEM, but that legacy still lives with us today. And that has got to be. That is why this study is very important. Now, from constituting about 1/3 of all doctoral graduates in 2010, the share of Black doctoral students in STEM fields increased to 44% in 2020. South African scientists have increased their research collaborations with the USA, Germany, UK, and Australia, all the other member states of BRICS, and a few other countries like in Canada and several European countries. Of course, we have a very important role to play in linking up with the rest of the continent. We are doing a lot. I don't have time to say that today. So that, for example, the one good example is our Africa Institute for Mathematical Sciences, AIMS, which is based in Muizenberg in Cape Town. The last I heard, it was about 80% of those students who are doing masters and PhDs are from the rest of the continent, and only about 20% that are South African. A deliberate intervention to link and support mathematical sciences in our continent. Now, on STI investments, in South Africa, gross expenditure on research and development as a percentage of the GDP, and this is not a good story, decreased from 0.76 in 2017-2018 to 0.61 in 2020-2021. Now, our target is 1.5 of GDP by 2030, but we've gone down. Now, business sector expenditure on R&D has been on a declining trend over the decade and declined further, as I say, in 2020-2021. The business sector's capacity to attract foreign funding is also declining overall and as a share of funding. South Africa's scientific publication output has seen a remarkable rise over the past 2 decades. A good story. The number of publications has increased from 3,693 in 2000 to, in year 2000, to 27,052 in 2021. However, despite the sustained increase in publication, the country's world share seems to have peaked at around 1% over the past 5 years. There's been a significant increase also in the number of female authors contributing to university publications, rising from 31% in 2005 to nearly 42% in 2021. However, in the field of biotechnology, South Africa's world share of publications peaked in 2019, but has experienced a decline in 2020 and again in 2021. On the issue of employment of researchers, most South African researchers are based in the higher education sector, 86.3% in 2020-2021, which means our university sector is still the single major, in fact, majority, not just even some. This is the single major contributor to R&D. On the contrary, the business sector's share of total researchers in the country declined from 15.2% in 2011-2012 to 7.3% in 2020 to 2021. Now, private sector's contribution is going down. That's not good news at all. In a country like South Africa, that has got the most sophisticated and possibly the largest of that sophisticated private sector or private industry in the whole of the continent. I've been told that Egypt has surpassed us now in some of the indicators. Science councils have been on a downward spiral that began in 2017 to 2018 with a decrease from 2,189, which was 3.9 researchers in 2016-2017, to 1,774, that is 2.9% researchers in 2020-2021. Considering this downward spiral, stakeholder discussion is urgently needed to find solutions. And of course, money. It's not just stakeholder engagement. It's important, but money as well. This report reveals that our universities have to train more staff in the STEM fields. However, we know that this requires a whole organizational redesign, and many of our universities creating the need to create more medical schools, engineering faculties, and larger science faculties. By the way, the Minister of Minerals and Energy has been on my case, DG, and Mohadi, that he has got some money from somewhere. I don't know where. So when he says that, I get excited. To actually start a mining school in Northwest. And it may not be for everything, but he says we can start on Monday. I want to meet with you because I've engaged with industry. Not only, by the way, does Northwest want a mining school, they also want a medical school. So we do need to meet with the Minister of Minerals because that will begin to address some of these. Of course, as I've said, that's the reason I'm delighted we're going to be establishing this new university in Ekurhuleni, which I hope will play a leading role in enhancing the growth of critical skills in the STEM fields needed to create jobs, boost the economy, and improve the lives of citizens. My conception of this new University of Science and Innovation is that it will not just simply be a standalone university, but it should also act to catalyze STEM disciplines in the rest of the university system. That's how it should be operated, which means competition, yes, is healthy amongst our higher education institutions, but cooperation as well is required, especially if we are facing such a huge developmental deficit as we are actually facing in our country. As you know, in this regard, South Africa has to respond to a number of challenges, which includes the after effect of the COVID pandemic, the economic crisis, which is manifested by persistent high levels of unemployment, poverty, and inequality that mainly affects the workers and the poor, whilst the crisis of social reproduction, the struggle for communities and families to make ends meet, is deepening that crisis and manifested by the associated inability of households to support their lives. And GBV, gender-based violence, is the single most disturbing indicator of the deepening crisis of social reproduction. A strange thing. Research Stats SA tells us, for instance, that 45% of boys grow up in women-headed households. That may even be more, actually, I suspect. And I'm one in those statistics myself. I grew up in a woman-headed household from age 12. It's a strange irony that women are such victims of violence, and usually spousal or partner violence. Yet, without women, many households in South Africa would have collapsed today. That's a fact. I grew up in a woman-headed household. May the men not condemn me, but if it was headed by my father, perhaps I would not be standing in front of you today. Anyway, I know of very few fathers who are capable of doing that. There are, but very few. Now, the issue of subordinate position of women in society is something that takes us back. So affirmation of women remains important. Although later this month, I'm also launching a very important campaign in the post-school education and training sector to mobilize males in this sector to support gender equality and women's emancipation. Because it's very clear that we can only fight the struggle for gender equality only to a certain extent. And we won't take it beyond a certain point unless men accept that a progressive man is the one who supports gender equality and women's emancipation. I'm launching this campaign in our institutions in my sector, joining others who have actually started doing so. Of course, the crisis we face also manifests itself in the general high levels of violence in our country. A significant percentage of the population, you know this, approximately 20% were counted as extremely poor in 2021. And other types of poverty remains very high as well. And youth unemployment has reached crisis proportions. Now, science, technology, and innovation has a lot to play in terms of contributing to development of society in a manner that we are able to deal with these problems. Another contradiction we have, which by the way characterizes many poor countries, is that we've got high levels of youth unemployment. At the same time, we've got high shortage of skills, which means that the challenge we have is to get these unemployed youth be given skills. That is why another issue that I've said to the Department of Education, Higher Education and Training, my department, they must address this year, is really to say, how do we change the size and shape of our post-school education and training system? We have 1.1 million university students, and we've got just under 600,000 TVET college students. The NDP says by 2030, we need 2.5 times the number of TVET students compared to university students. Now, we have 7 years to that target, but it's very steep given the challenges that we have. Although prepared by my department, the decadal plan is not only a plan for the Department of Science and Innovation or for government alone, but for all of South Africa, if we are to correct some of these things. Through a number of policy, governance, and funding interventions, the decadal plan seeks to enhance our national consensus, coordination, and cooperation, including through enhanced public-private partnerships, to put science, technology, and innovation at the heart of South Africa's growth and developmental agenda. On the issue of forging public-private partnerships and the declining contribution of the private sector to STI, tonight I will be hosting a dinner in Johannesburg with industry leaders to discuss investment opportunities and strategy into South Africa's STI system. At this DG, we are pleased to have agreed now with from this year, the President's investment conference that he holds every year, that as part of that investment conference, we must also pitch our STI system so that we are able to attract more investment into science, technology, and innovation. This dinner that I'm having tonight is part of the activities that we identified through our white paper of 2019, which introduced a focus on increasing the investment by the private sector in South Africa's research and development agenda. Furthermore, our South Africa's higher education, science, technology, and innovation institutional landscape report, which was led by Professor Rensburg, former VC of University of Johannesburg, recommended measures to revitalize private sector investment in research and development, in particular to bring the state-owned enterprises back into research and development. It's very sad, the declining role of the SOEs in contributing to skills development, by the way, as well as STI. That former state-owned enterprise, Sasol, that was privatized on the eve of the transition to South Africa, used to be the single largest employer of PhDs. Eskom, we used to have very dynamic interaction on the skills development side and contributing to science and innovation. That has declined. Now, I don't want to be controversial. Yes, our SOEs have largely been decimated by state capture, but it doesn't start there. It starts with the macroeconomic policy, if I were to be self-critical as government, that we adopted in 1996. We were told in 1998, invest in Eskom. Otherwise, we're going to have blackouts. We ignored that because we thought as a developing country, much as the private sector has a role to play, we wanted everything to be led by the market. Unfortunately, the market discriminates sometimes. On the one hand, it's good, it incentivizes, but on the other hand, it doesn't help. That's why I always tell people, South Africa's electrification is perhaps the most impressive in the world that we did in the 1990s. We would not have done that were it not Eskom being a state-owned entity. This must not distract from the fact that we do need a partnership between the public and the private sector, and also know who is best to play what role. We do need business to actually play its role and not just say that belongs to government. And where the private sector also has to invest, we do need investment. There's still an argument in this country that we still have an investment strike. In fact, there are people who are saying the beginnings of the decline of the United States as a global hegemon has got to do also with an investment strike by big companies that are investing in the United States. So my dinner tonight, therefore, is one of our most important attempts to ensure that we work with the private sector to grow South Africa's investment. In conclusion, let me take this time to thank all of you. I might have gone a little bit longer. Program director, excuse me. When I talk about science matters, I don't know how to put this in English. You will interpret to those sitting next to you who don't understand. I don't know what's the scientific description of ukuvuka umoya, or you will say that's totally unscientific, teacher. Thank you very much for being part of this. I really appreciate this. We value your presence here because you indeed, by being here, are the champions for growing our science, technology, and innovation system. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mphathiswa. I hope after that address, wonke umuntu uvuke ngumoya, because you have highlighted quite a few concerns that are in the report that I'm hoping later on we will be discussing and engaging with all the concerns. And not all is doom and gloom. There are some glimpses of hope. There are some aspects, some trends that are looking positive. However, there are quite a few concerns that are coming from the report. One of the issues that you highlighted, Minister, was the issue of the STEM subjects. I know when I was still at school, that's SAJO. So it looks like that has not really changed. So something still needs to be done in terms of encouraging young people to take up the STEM subjects. In fact, we were seen as nerds. The STEM subjects, you know, but I think something still needs to be done in that respect. And thank you once again, Minister, for highlighting the role of women in society. And as I've said, you have highlighted the concerns that are coming through. And I'm also, you know, happy that you are actually thinking about the PhD funding for my age mates in case we want to, you know, because, you know, at this age, the kids are gone, we've got time on our hands, and we are thinking, you know, what else can I do? Maybe, you know, I want to write some paper, you know, I want to spend more time being more nerdy. So, you know, if we can get that funding, because it does become a struggle for people over 40 years of age to get the funding. With all of that said, I'm going to call up the Nike CEO, Dr. Mlungisi Cele, to give us more detail on the STI indicators report.
Good morning, Minister. Good morning, Chairperson of NECI, Mr. Manyoni, members of the NECI Council, including the Program Director who wants to do a PhD. But you don't do a PhD because you are bored. This is one. So abevanga abanye abantu. You must look at the sky and dream. That's what blue sky is all about. So Deputy Director Generals, Deputies Director General, the CEOs of science councils and other sectors, including business, the civil society, my colleagues from the NECI Secretariat, the officials in government, workers if they're here, and a special word of appreciation to the team that worked with me in producing this report, a team of experts who are acknowledged in the report, led by Dr. Petros Letaba, and the reference group, a team of wise men and women led by Rasigan. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen. The minister has, and the chair, they've of course covered some aspects of what's contained in the report. I have no intention of repeating what they have said, but if it does happen that maybe we go through some slides, don't feel perhaps otherwise. It's in the nature of the work that is being done. Colleagues, I'm just reminded, maybe before I continue with the presentation, I just want to share the story by the richest man in Africa. I think it's Aliko Dangote. The moral of the story, by the way, we will come back to it at the end of the presentation. So let me make that disclaimer. But he says in one of his interviews that his financial advisors and the bankers, they kept telling him that he was worth 13 billion US dollars, I think. So every time he went to the bank, so they showed him the numbers. But it doesn't say in the interview what was worrying him about those numbers. But he tells a story that one day he decided to go to the bank. He brought his checkbook. He then asked for 10 million US dollar to cash out. So they gave him that 10 million US dollars. I'm glad the minister is not here. So he took that money, put it in the boot and went home. So I don't know where he kept that money at home, but he kept it somewhere. Yeah, so maybe the sofas or mattress, but the minister is not here. So chief of staff, I didn't say that. I'm talking about the richest man. So, but he then says, DG in the chair, that he only, after, carrying that money, that he really believed for the first time the numbers that he was being shown every time he went to the bank. So I don't know, as I said, maybe the moral of the story will deal about it, about the numbers which will be presenting and how people need to feel the impact. It's something that, but I just want you to keep that at the back of our mind. The context of the indicators report, the minister did speak to it, but it's important just to highlight that, of course, our condition is that of a socio-economic crisis, as the minister said, with deepening high levels of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, with youth and women at the receiving end of that challenge. But we're also facing an existential crisis posed by climate change. And as human species, this is a real threat facing us. One challenge with this crisis is that at a global policy level, there is inconsistency and misalignment in the manner in which this matter is being approached and dealt with. But also we are confronted with the energy, water, food security nexus challenge in this country, and the minister did speak to it. And then, of course, the geopolitical crisis with the continuing Russian and Ukraine conflict that is having an impact on a range of issues, including, by the way, STI policy and the work that is being done. And we're still dealing with the effects and the post-COVID, and thinking about what does the post-COVID-19 era mean. And as a sector, as the NSI, it's part of what we also need to be thinking about. As NECI, we are thinking about what does it mean. But we do feel that notwithstanding all of these challenges, that both the white paper and the decadal plan for STI, they do herald hope, promise, and should in fact inspire a new sense of optimism. And the minister did speak to it. These are some of the issues covered in the report. Both the chair and the minister did speak to issues related to human resources for STI and the expansion of research capacity. The questions of pipeline, we'll maybe talk to the issues around qualifications, the staff student ratio, the investment and the financing of the NSI, issues related to knowledge production and exploitation. And of course, we are much more interested in the outcomes and impacts. This report is framed based or following this framework that the NECI produced in 2020. It's got the enablers, the flows and linkages, the outputs, and the impact. Of course, the report may not cover all these elements, which we must accept, but it does make an attempt to deal with them. But we also do acknowledge, as some colleagues cautioned us and actually called for us to refine this framework as we move forward, that issues of sustainability need to be foregrounded in the report. So the presentation will start with the STI enablers, particularly the human resources for STI and research capacity. And I'll skip some slides which have been covered by the minister. So the first slide talks to the proportion of permanent academic female professors to the total professors, looking in terms of race. That's in 2020, we have seen a percentage increase in the number of African and female permanent academics. So, for instance, if you look at female professors, the increase went up to 37.5% from 27.8% in 2011. And this is progress. So with white female professors being dominant, they are followed by African female professors. So that's one positive aspect that we're observing around the system, and it has to do with the efforts by both government and probably the institutions themselves. So the minister did speak to this slide. So we're just sharing with you graphically what the minister was saying, that if you look in terms of staff, the composition of staff with staff from STEM fields has not really changed much since 2010, but it's just around 51%. So this point has been made by the ministers. So except that, Minister, I think from our side, the program like the New Generation of Academics program, we can see that it has begun to make an impact. So we're proposing for its scale up, and that must also be done jointly with some of the proposals that you have made here. And then, of course, when you look at researchers in total, you can see that in as much as there is progress in terms of females, but men, they still dominate. So we're looking at researchers in total. The gap is closing, though. But when you zoom in on the academic aspect, and you look at gender, as the minister was saying, so you can see that we are closer to gender parity. Now, this is the proportion of permanent academic staff in terms of the racialized categories. You can see progress regarding African academics compared to 2010, where they constituted 27%. In 2021, they are now constituting 43%. It's progress, but more can still be done. So this slide confirms what we are saying, some progress that we are observing. Now, when you look at where the researchers are employed, that's on the outcome side. The minister does indicate most researchers are based in universities, about 86% of them. Now, the business sector share of total researchers in the country has gone down from 15% in 2011 to 7% in 2020. The minister did speak to the concern around science councils that have seen the drop in the number of researchers, at least since 2017. So it's something we need to be thinking about, because it's about the capability of the system. So if you look at the percentage staff with doctoral qualifications, the report says that I think it's the NDP target, if I'm not mistaken, of having 75% of academic staff, is that there's still a long way to go before we could realize that objective. So Funeka, if you leave your private sector, you go to higher education, maybe you'll help us to realize that objective. So this point has also been made by the minister, and the graph just shows you the said graduates as a percentage of all graduates in our universities. That it has remained more or less. So if you look at, it has really, if you look at 2012, where we were in 2012, in 2021, we are more or less where we were in 2012. And then, so you can see the the gap between, or the proportion at least, of set doctoral graduates compared to the total, and how we are, or they faring. And this is the split of doctoral graduates that we're saying, even though there is now a slight dip since 2018, you can see that females, they shot up, but beginning to, at a later stage, we do caution about these recent declines. But it's important to understand and see what they are, but be very cautious about not rushing to make conclusions about at least these recent declines. So this has been spoken about. Now, Minister, maybe just the issue around mobility of doctoral graduates it's a point that we would like to share with colleagues, because it's one thing to produce numbers, but it's another thing to, where do they go? So as we can see, this slide, it shows the differences between graduates, sectors of employment at the time of doing research, and their sector of employment at the time of their doctoral studies. And then the next one, it's around the mobility between various sectors of employment. So whether people, they move from one sector to another during the time of their studies and the current employment. And then this one, whether people do migrate or move to other countries, and what happened to those who are not coming from South Africa after completion. So we can see through the slide that 73% of those graduates, they do remain here in South Africa. But just look at those who would have come from the rest of Africa. Where do they go after completion? And then the rest of the world. So we can then have a conversation later on about what this data says about where do students go afterwards. So the minister has already spoken about what needs to be done, having considered the challenges around human resources progress, and where we need to, and we don't need to repeat this because the minister has already emphasized, except that the programs that they had has been initiated, in our view, they need to be upscaled. Now, on the investment and financing, it's important to locate where South Africa is, first within the BRICS itself, but also the rest of the world. So you can see how far we are, how far back we are as a country. Just look at at other BRICS countries, where they are in terms of their level of investment in R&D. So then we get a sense of the journey that we need to travel. So this is a graphic representation of what the minister was sharing and the chair with you about our current state of R&D investment as a percentage of GDP, and where we are coming from. And then the different components. So we can clearly see business dipping down, and then we can see higher education slightly taking off. And then, so this one just simply, we are not being too sensationalist by creating this graph, but it illustrates the crisis that we are facing regarding business expenditure in R&D. It's just way, it's down spiral. And Minister, NACI Council had a discussion with the British Chamber of Commerce 2 weeks ago. And this slide, we spent time, and the chair was there, and people wanted to have a discussion about this slide, because we're saying to them, we are interested to hear from your side as business. Why is this the case? And what is it that can be done to arrest the situation? But we are also interested, and this is why we spend some time around the investment, looking at different dimensions. We also wanted to know, where does the money go in terms of basic, applied, and experimental development? And those of you who are perhaps who spend time studying developments of other countries, this slide has a lot to say, because where you invest your money, whether in basic, applied, and experimental, it also has an impact in terms of your developmental trajectory, or the pathway to which that you need to follow. But what we are observing, for some time, applied research used to enjoy substantial, proportion of funding, but that has since gone down, and it's something we need to be thinking about. We're not sure yet what is explaining this change in terms of investment in research types, but we can see at least the experimental development is slightly taking off, but both, whether the applied is stabilizing, we are yet to determine. And then when you look at the R&D expenditure by sectors, of course, we have spoken to this, and the minister made the point, with higher education enjoying an increase in R&D expenditure, with business going down. We also looked at business-funded R&D by various sectors. I'm not so sure if you can see the figures, but it's very interesting for us that business sector is primarily funding R&D in higher education. Well, it used to be higher education and science councils, but since 2016 and 17, we have seen a decline. Again, it's part of us needing to understand why is that the case. But we also got interested to know, beside funding of institutions and sectors, which research fields or areas of specialization do enjoy, or where do the money go to? So if you look at the period between 2011 and 2020, we can see that marine sciences, they have enjoyed the highest growth, starting from a small base. And earth sciences and social sciences and humanities showing growth above 100%. So I'm not so sure, Minister, maybe it's, this growth, is it a coincidence, or whether the minister has had an effect on why humanities and social sciences are, have received so much. But investments in applied sciences and technologies, as well as chemical sciences, and perhaps that's the concern, has been declining. And this is something we need to be thinking about. But what we also, and the minister made the point, that the foreign funded R&D in the business sector has also declined. So, Chair, as a person who comes from business, it might be also curious to know why our business sector is also struggling to attract funding from foreign funders. So we also look at the different aspects of, or the different sectors, and provide the breakdown. Now, when you look at the expenditure in the manufacturing sector, the percentage share of high-tech manufacturing in total manufacturing R&D increased between 2018-19, 2019-20, especially in 20 and in 2021. However, the increase in 2021 was only slightly higher than at the start of the decade, with no clear trend of increase. On the other hand, the share of low-tech sectors grew for most of the decade, except for a decline in 2019-20 and 2021, where it dropped. As a consequence, the share of low-tech sectors in total manufacturing R&D declined slightly compared to the beginning of the decade. Another important aspect around the relationship between innovation and the economy is around venture capital investments, where we look at investments per value as well as the investments per the number of deals. There's been a steady increase in the value of venture capital investments and the number of deals in South Africa over the last decade, with faster growth rates since 2015. Although this growth rate slowed in 2020, the investment value continued to rise. However, in 2021, the number of deals increased significantly by 11.4%, but the nominal value of investment decreased. So while we are observing these positive developments around venture capital, in 2021, South Africa's share of VC deals declined to 17%, with Nigeria becoming the leading country for the number of deals. And then Nigeria was the leading country for VC deal value in 2021, with South Africa's share at 15%. In the first half of 2022, Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana all exceeded South Africa in VC deal value. Again, this is part of what we'll be interested to know when we engage business, because we need to understand what is it that these other countries are doing better that's making them to cede or to overtake us. We need to appreciate and we need to learn. So when we look at issues around infrastructure, and then of course it was quite limited here, we relied on the data from the ITU. We just look at BRICS infrastructure and access. So this table, it indicates that in South Africa, network coverage and mobile cellular ownership are at 100%, which is amongst the highest in the BRICS. But in other aspects, we are lagging behind. Again, the question is, what do we do to exploit the fact that we're having so many people with mobile cellular phone? And then what else we need to do to take advantage of this whole digitization era? Now, when we come to knowledge production and utilization, the number of scientific articles has grown from 3,693 in 2000 to 27,000 in 2021. I think that's huge progress, but we are also seeing that our well share has sort of leveled off around 1% in the last 5 years, despite continued increase in publications. DG has challenged us, and I'm saying the team that's working with us, that we need to appreciate, we need to know and understand why is this the case and be able to explain. Because when you look at other countries like China and India, and this is, it's not a worrying, so we don't need to take that attitude towards BRICS countries. It's not a worrying trend. It's a positive trend. We need to appreciate and understand what is it that they are doing to increase their scientific output at a faster pace than us. And maybe there are lessons learned there which we can then draw and use to advance in our own dimension. Minister, this is a slide we were indicating. It gives you a sense of the different countries and where we are. I mean, South Africa, when you look at it compared to 29 countries, it's now second. In Africa, it's now number 2, behind Egypt, which has published 5,000 more articles in 2021. And then, of course, as we did with funding, we also try to zoom in terms of the fields of specialization. And we can see these areas that are aligned to the policy or strategies that the department has been driving. The 3 areas, the nanotechnology, digitization, and biotechnology, they've shown the highest growth based on academic publications. The biotech has remained stagnant. So, but then if you look at the overall publication output per million population, our system is relatively productive, colleagues, and I think we need to really celebrate this, but make sure that we remain, because this is one indicator globally speaking, which we have always been recognized as an aspect where South Africa is almost like punching above its weight, but we must not remain complacent. So again, when you look at the percentage share, again, because we have an interest around transformation, of these indicators, the minister already spoke about progress that females have made in terms of publications. So he did speak to this slide. So again, the slide. Okay, I'm sure it's not a number. Okay. So, I mean, this is clearly someone who's against knowledge production, who could only say, clearly, research collaborations, colleagues, is key to an academic research enterprise. It's key. So what we are seeing here is a gradual decrease in the single authored papers across all fields, from around 20% in 2000 to 10% in 2021. We think this is not surprising as NECI. The majority of single authored papers are concentrated in fields such as philosophy, history, and mathematics. Furthermore, the percentage of collaboration taking place within South Africa has also decreased. So maybe, Minister, what you are calling for, the multidisciplinarity or interdisciplinarity, the funding model that NRF has been promoting over decades, maybe it's beginning to have an effect in terms of this, but we need to confirm. But we also know the changes that happened at universities, the reorganization at universities, where some people move from traditional disciplinary approaches to transdisciplinary and reorganize their structures. Consequently, fields such as these ones might have not or might have struggled. So this slide is also about the impact, because it's, from the research point of view, it's not enough to simply publish. But one way or one instrument that is used to determine whether your publication has an impact is citation. So if you publish and no one cite your, and if you want to be vice chancellor, of course, you need to be, Morris, am I correct, right? So you need to be doing well because they look at these figures. So DG, I think you still have 5 years, so you need to work a little bit harder in improving your standing here. So when you move from publications to patents, that's the cousin. So this slide will, it provides you the number of patent grants registered in EPO. We can see that it's been fluctuating between 2011 and 2021. And of course, we observe a decline, but it's not just South Africa. I think as we observe, there is a general decline of 18.6% for all countries. We also interested to look at issues of exports and the role that innovation is playing, and this is just a general picture around Africa's exports. So when you look at South Africa's world share of semiconductor patents, it decreased from a high point of 0.115 in 2012 to 0.006 in 2021. Again, the slide, when you look at the US Patent Office, we can then see the challenges that we're experiencing around patents. Now, when you look at South Africa in relation to BRICS, in terms of utility, patents at US PTO, this is what you will find. Overall, if you look at BRICS, there will be the percentage share will be in 2019 13.8%. Here 0.09. So again, it's important for us to compare ourselves with other partners. We are also interested not just in patents, but also looking at issues of the technology balance of payments, right? So the notions of payments and receipts for intellectual property, because this has also to do with the quality of our payments and the extent to which we can export and import. And this is what we were able, so one column shows you how much we paid, and then the other one tells you how much we received. So, Minister, I hear some people when we show the slide. Again, this slide, it helps us to appreciate this question around receipts. So for instance, SA receipts from sale of IPA were lower in 2021 compared to 2016. And again, if you compare South Africa with the rest of middle income countries, again, the share of its receipts has declined significantly and consistently from 3.3% in 2016 to 0.8% in 2021. Let's move. So we did talk to this one. And again, we did speak to this slide. So when you look at manufacturing and the medium and high tech manufacturing value added profiles, the manufacturing output is measured by gross value added. In 2021, it increased by 4.5%. And then this followed a decline of 12% in 2020. So, however, the manufacturing GVA in 2021 was still lower than a decade ago. But so we notice progress. So we hope that the progress continues. So again, when you look at the overall number of researchers per thousands total employment, after a period of growth in the total number of researchers by headcount, there's been a downward trend since 2018, 2019, from 36,233 to 34,000 in 2022. Raskin, I appreciate that these figures may be, there may be debates about them and how, but nevertheless, we are sharing this picture. And then, so when you look at different sectors within the medium and high tech sectors, we can see that their share of GVA have been stable over the last decade. But when you zoom in and you look at special purpose machinery, its share has increased after 2016. So it's important to zoom in, to look at different elements and see where progress is being made and where progress is not being made. But we also looked at the high technology sectors across different provinces. And we can see that employment in high-tech sectors increased in all provinces except the Eastern Cape. So in 21, Gauteng had the highest employment in high-tech sectors, 11,956 actually, followed by the Western Cape and KZN. And then, so when you look at the overall share of medium and high tech in respect of employment, again, the special purpose machinery and motor vehicle are the two sectors that have had some growth in their shares of manufacturing output, and which also a small increase in their share of employment over the decade. So the question will be, what is it that can be done with these two sectors to improve their capability, but also look at other sectors in terms of how they can also be uplifted. But it's also helps us to appreciate that innovation and technology does play a role in certain sectors of our economy. I mean, this is another way of presenting what we had shared. So maybe colleagues will ask us why NEC is interested in exports as a measure of innovation, because it's a recent addition to our reports, those who have been following our reports. So there are two dimensions, as we appreciate of, there is product innovation and there is process innovation. So under product innovation, so you'll have new exporters, new products, new markets. So when we see new markets and new products, new exporters, it does say something about innovation, the role of innovation, or at least the state of our innovation and the contribution of our economy, of our innovation to the economy. And then on the process side, when the export volumes increase of existing products, that also can indicate something. If there is no progress, then we should then be able to appreciate. So that's part of the reason why we are deepening our analysis and understanding, looking at exports as a measure of innovation. Here we don't want to bore you, but we're just giving you because it's in the report, a sense of what are the manufacturing exports characteristics that we have looked at. For instance, the number of exporters, the number of products, the number of destinations, and the number of transactions. That's too technical, so we don't want to bore people. But in the report, we provide details around this. And we also look at issues around the diversity of South African exports, the number of products in which SA is competitive. So between 2010 and 2020. So just to summarize what we're presenting around production, that is a very slow increasing in the manufacturing of high technologies. And we can see when you look at the sectoral composition that there is a decreasing share of manufacturing. So no indication of any subsectors where there is significant and sustained growth. We are also interested because, to see where the government is transforming, is exploiting, is seizing the opportunities presented by digitization. Where are we moving towards e-government? So there is an e-government development index that is internationally used. So we benchmark South Africa, and South Africa rose from 0.49 in 2012 to 0.74% in 2022. Again, it's something that we need to appreciate as a country. That's something positive that's happening. Of course, it would be inadequate and improper for NACI to simply end in terms of looking at innovation and the economy without looking at society, because it's important. That's why we spoke about socio-economic. So the poverty trends in South Africa. So the team that's been working with us, they've looked at 3 categories of poverty: the upper bound, lower bound, and extreme poverty. And then our conclusion is that although South Africa is a middle income country, it still faces many socio-economic challenges, as we have, and the minister did indicate. And when you look at where we were in 2014, in terms of extreme poverty, and where we are in 2029, there's a slight increase in terms of people living under extreme poverty. Now, in concluding, Program Director, before you raise your warning. So there is a consistent picture of decline in both the inputs and the outputs of our system as we have presented. Particularly a slow growth at approximately 2015, 2016, and the decline thereafter. There is something we need to appreciate what happens. In some instances, latest data suggests that the rate of decline is accelerating. However, like in the business investment decline, some of these declines may well have been overstated. And this is part of the analysis that we are saying. Because there was decline in some respects, which was evident before COVID, approximately since 2015, 2016. Now, when you look at the issues around investment in R&D, OECD countries, they continue to increase their commitments to R&D by 5% per annum pre-COVID, and then 1.5% during COVID. We also do acknowledge that there are knowledge gaps in the system, which may also have affected the report that we have produced. So there is a lack or maybe sufficient or limited knowledge about both established firms and startups. As a consequence, we still, well, at least we can speak about NACI and those who work with us, that we are still having challenges to know what accounts for strong performance of startups, and then to appreciate the heterogeneity among established firms. But there are new sources of evidence and data which we are beginning to explore, including our South African Reserve Revenue Services and National Treasury FEMLEV panel data. But as those who are working with data will know, accessing such data is a huge challenge. So you've got to write memos, and we are grateful that the DG has helped us in some respects to access that data because it's required. But we do need to appreciate, to indicate, colleagues, that sometimes the issue around data accessibility, it becomes a strange thing that some entities, including, by the way, NSI entities, they make it difficult to access data if you're local, but international bodies like OECD, they find it easy to access that data. And I never understand it. Why should we struggle to access our own data as South Africans from our colleagues, but international bodies are able to access the same data? It's something that it remains perplexing for me. But we are planning a workshop to engage around it. So, Program Director, of course, our responsibility is to generate advice where possible, emanating from the various aspects of the report, and then engage the minister. But there are areas that require urgent attention. In our view, the issue around pipeline, investment in postgraduate students, focusing on, building on, that cohort of young academics, making sure that a lot of them, they acquire doctoral qualifications to deal with the challenges that we had indicated up front, and the ongoing struggle to transform the professorate. And then, of course, the big one is the business investment in R&D. And then for science councils, the decline of employment of researchers is an issue, at least from NECI, where NECI stands. So we thank you, colleagues, for being patient to listen to us, and we encourage you to read the report that the team will be making it available to you. We had to wait for the minister to officially talk to you and of course grant us permission to release the report. Thank you very much. Maybe.
Thank you so much, CEO, for those sobering trends. I think it's quite, interesting to see, the trends in terms of, the decline in researchers in the business sector, and what you've also emphasized, the decline in R&D spend by business from the business sector. So this is quite close to my heart. And you've highlighted the decline in foreign funding. What also is very concerning from the report is, again, the high levels of poverty. There is a quote that says, "When the people shall have nothing more to eat, they will eat the rich." So I think we need to really worry about these trends that we are seeing that have been shown by the report. At this point, we will take a short tea break. It was supposed to be 30 minutes, but we will cut it down because of time. We started a bit late, so we will cut it down to 15 minutes. Time now is 11:02. Can we still be back and be seated by 11:17 so that we can engage the report? We can have the discussions. we would welcome, the rich discussions that will be coming from everybody in the room and also online. Thank you very much.